Finian Croft's breath clouded the frozen air as the last passenger disappeared into the blizzard. The Whisper Creek train station stood empty, a lonely oil lamp flickering against the December darkness. He'd come for supplies that never arrived, another broken promise in a long line of them. He turned toward his horse when he saw her. A woman slumped against the wooden bench. Her features, unfamiliar in this remote corner of the world, were etched with exhaustion. Her nurse's uniform was stained with blood. Her lips were blue. One hand clutched a leather medical bag like it was the only thing tethering her to life. Finian approached slowly, boots crunching on frozen snow. Her breathing came shallow and weak. Frostbite darkened her fingertips. Her dark hair was laced with ice crystals. She mumbled something. The child, we tried. He crouched beside her, touched her shoulder. His mind ran the calculations every poor man knows. His cabin sat 2 hours away through deadly cold. He had firewood for maybe a week if he stretched it, food for 2 weeks if he didn't eat much. Taking her in might cost him everything. But leaving her meant certain death. Out here, a man's measured by what he does when nobody's watching, his father used to say. Finian pulled off his only coat and wrapped it around her thin frame. He lifted her, lighter than she should be, and placed her across his horse's saddle. Her medical bag he tied carefully beside her. "Don't know who you are, stranger," he said to her unhearing ears. "But dying alone ain't right for nobody. You hold on." You hear? He climbed up behind her, keeping her steady against his chest. The station lamp grew smaller as they rode into the darkness. Snow began to fall harder, erasing their tracks. Finian muttered into the wind, "God help us both." The frozen woman didn't answer, but her heart still beat against his arm. For now, that was enough. Finian kicked the cabin door open and carried her to his only bed. The one-room structure felt colder than outside. He started a fire with numb, trembling hands, coaxing reluctant flames from damp kindling. Steam rose as snow melted from her uniform. He worked quickly, clinically, stripping away her frozen outer clothes. His late wife's old blanket and his only quilt went around her. The fire caught and held. 3 days blurred together. Fever ravaged her. She thrashed and called out names he didn't recognize. He forced thin broth between her cracked lips. Kept the fire burning. Slept sitting up in his chair, jerking awake every hour to check her breathing. On the 4th morning, her eyes opened. Terror flashed across her face. She tried to sit up, scanning the unfamiliar room, the rough furniture, the leaking roof, the single photo on the mantel. "Where am I? Who are you?" Finian backed away, hands raised peacefully. "You're safe, Found you froze near dead at the station. I'm Finian Croft. This is my land." She stared at him, breathing hard, deciding whether to trust. Her gaze fell on the medical bag sitting carefully beside the bed. "My bag." "Didn't touch nothing inside," Finian said. "Figured it was important to you." Some of the fear left her face. She slumped back against the thin pillow. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm My Lynn." Finian nodded. "Miss Lynn, just My Lynn," she corrected. He moved to the fireplace, added another log. "You were bad off. Frostbite on your fingers, fever for 3 days. You're lucky to be breathing." When My Lynn looked down at her bandaged hands, torn cloth, carefully wrapped, she saw the photo on the mantel, a young woman, smiling, the frame covered in dust. "Your family?" she asked quietly. Was it the single word carried 3 years of grief? My Lynn understood without asking. Loss recognized loss. "I'm sorry," she said. Finian turned from the fire. "No need. But I got to be straight with you. I got food for maybe 2 weeks if we're careful. Winter don't care about our plans. You bend or you break." My Lynn sat up slowly, ignoring the protest of her aching body. She looked at this man who'd saved her life. Worn clothes, calloused hands, eyes that had seen too much sorrow. "Then I won't be a burden long," she said. "I'm a nurse. A real one. I can earn my keep. Something in Finian's expression shifted. Not quite hope, but close to it. We'll figure it out, he said. For now, you rest. But My Lin was already looking out the window, seeing the simple wooden cross in the near distance. Snow covered the grave, but love had placed it there. She knew that much. She whispered again, softer, I'm sorry for the trouble. Finian replied, no trouble. Just two people trying to get through winter. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire crackled, and for the first time in months, neither of them was completely alone. Morning light turned the snow-covered hills silver. My Lin stood at the window, staring at the grave marker. Finian entered with an armload of firewood, followed her gaze, and said nothing. Over breakfast, thin porridge stretched with water, the truth came out in careful pieces. I'm from Boston, My Lin said, hands wrapped around a chipped cup for warmth. I worked for a wealthy family. The Harrisons. Finian listened, spooning his porridge slowly. Last fall, the patriarch, old Mr. Harrison, was dying. Cancer. Had maybe weeks left. But their housemaid's son came down with pneumonia. 7 years old, treatable if caught early. Her voice steadied, rehearsing a story she'd told herself 1,000 times. They called me for Mr. Harrison. I went to the child first. Mr. Harrison was already gone. Nothing I could do would change that. But the boy, he could live. What happened? Finian asked. I saved the boy. Mr. Harrison died while I was treating him. The family said I chose wrong. Said I murdered their father by choosing a nobody over a somebody. They destroyed my career, made sure no hospital in Boston would hire me. She looked directly at Finian. They whispered it was because I, a woman from the Orient, had no right to make such a choice at all. So I left. I came west because there was nowhere else to go. That's who you saved. A disgraced nurse running from her past. Finian set down his spoon. He rolled his left shoulder, a movement My Lin noticed immediately with a trained eye. 3 winters passed, he said slowly, I lost my wife, Amelia. A fever took her. Quick and cruel. He paused, the next words costing him more. We couldn't have children. Knew it for years. Always talked about adopting, building a family anyway once the ranch was prosperous. When she died, all of that died with her. I was away buying horses, trying to make something for us. Lost most of the ranch paying debts. This cabin and 10 acres is all that's left. My Lin watched him carefully. Your shoulder. That's an old break, isn't it? Healed wrong. Finian looked surprised. Last summer. Horse threw me. Never set right. I can fix that, My Lin said. And I can earn my keep if you'll let me stay through winter. Treat your neighbors. Anyone who needs help. Split whatever I earn. Finian studied her. Town will talk. A poor widower and an unmarried Chinese woman under one roof. They'll have opinions. Let them talk. Might not be that simple. But Agnes Thorne, my nearest neighbor, she's good people. Sharp-tongued but fair. If she approves, others might follow. My Lin extended her bandaged hand across the rough table. I won't be charity, Mr. Croft. To Finian, he corrected. And it ain't charity if you're working. He shook her hand carefully. A horse knows a hard man from a kind one. So do I. That afternoon, Agnes Thorne arrived, a sturdy woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She looked My Lin up and down like she was evaluating livestock. So you're the frozen nurse? Agnes said, her tone skeptical. Finian says you're staying if he'll have me, My Lin replied evenly. Agnes turned to Finian. Town won't like this. Gideon Blackwood especially. He's been looking for reasons to get your land. I know. Agnes set down a basket of preserves. Girl's got purpose in her eyes. That's more than most folks got. After Agnes left, My Lin found Amelia's sewing kit in a drawer. Without asking permission, she began mending Finian's torn shirt, her stitches careful and precise. Finian watched from the doorway. The sight of someone caring for his things, his home, cracked something in his chest that had been frozen solid for 3 years. "Thank you," he said quietly. My Lin looked up, smiled slightly. Just earning my keep, but they both knew it was more than that. Something was beginning here. Something neither quite understood yet. Outside, the first evening star appeared. Inside, 2 broken people sat in comfortable silence, mending what could be mended. January brought routine and rhythm. My Lin worked on Finian's shoulder each morning, kneading, manipulating, carefully coaxing the joint back to proper alignment. Finian gritted his teeth through the pain, but within 2 weeks, his range of motion improved noticeably. Word spread cautiously through the valley. Agnes Thorne mentioned the Chinese nurse at Croft's place to a desperate mother whose son struggled to breathe. The woman arrived at dawn, terrified, carrying a gasping child. My Lin worked quickly, steam tent, herbal poultices, keeping the boy upright through the worst hours. By evening, his breathing eased. By morning, the crisis passed. The mother paid with a basket of eggs and tearful gratitude. More came after that. Farmers too proud to see the town doctor. Ranchers too poor to afford his fees. A pregnant woman worried about bleeding. An old man with an infected wound that wouldn't heal. My Lin treated them all. She accepted what they could offer: flour, preserved vegetables, a repaired harness, fresh milk. Finian built her a small examination area in the corner of the cabin, clean, organized, respectful of her profession. They developed rhythms. Finian taught My Lin to split wood properly, angle the axe, let gravity do the work. She showed him how to clean wounds without whiskey, boiled water and clean cloth worked better and hurt less. They worked side by side repairing the leaking roof, Finian on the ladder, My Lin handing up shingles, both of them laughing when she made a joke about his carpentry skills. "I can fix bones," she said. "You fix roofs." "We each got our talents, neighbors might talk," Finian replied, hammering a nail home. "But they remember who helps when the chips are down." Christmas Eve arrived quiet and cold. They shared a simple stew by firelight. Finian disappeared into the barn and returned with a small wrapped bundle. "These were Amelia's," he said, handing My Lin a pair of winter gloves, fine leather, lovingly maintained. She'd want them used, not locked away. My Lin's eyes filled with tears, the first she'd allowed since Boston. "Finian, I can't, you can." "You should." She tried them on. A perfect fit. She looked at him across the firelight, this good man who'd saved her life, and asked nothing in return. "You've done more good in 2 months than I've done in 2 years, Finian said quietly. "You saved my life, Finian. I'm just returning the favor." Feels like more than that. The words hung in the warm air between them, neither quite brave enough to name what was growing, but both feeling it, steady, undeniable, real. That night, Finian slept in the barn to maintain propriety, but he lay awake in the hay, watching the lamplight glow from the cabin window. My Lin stood at that window, looking toward the barn, one hand pressed against the cold glass. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Both of them were learning that truth together. The blizzard hit on the 3rd night of January, a sudden, vicious, screaming wind that turned day to night. For 4 days they were trapped inside. Snow piled against the door waist high. The world disappeared into white chaos. Only the cabin existed, firelight and forced proximity, and nowhere to hide. The first day passed in practical tasks, rationing food, keeping the fire fed, melting snow for water. They worked together efficiently, speaking only what was necessary. The second day brought conversation. My Lin read aloud from Finian's only book, the Bible. Finian whittled a small horse figurine, letting the wood shavings fall into the fire. The silence between words grew comfortable instead of awkward. The third morning, My Lin spoke the full truth. "The patriarch, Mr. Harrison, he was dying anyway," she said, staring into the flames. Cancer had spread everywhere. He had weeks at most, and those weeks would have been agony. The boy had pneumonia, but it was early, completely treatable. Finian's hand stilled on the wood. "I knew what they'd say. I knew what it would cost me. But that child was 7 years old with his whole life ahead. Mr. Harrison was 83 and ready to go. He told me so himself the week before. Her voice cracked. I chose, and they called me a murderer anyway. Said I let somebody die to save a nobody. Finian set down his whittling and moved to sit beside her on the floor by the fire. I chose wrong, too, he said quietly. I was buying breeding stock. A business decision. Trying to earn enough so we could finally afford to travel, to adopt a child. Amelia went into labor with that fever so fast. If I'd been there, maybe I would have noticed sooner. You couldn't have known, Mylin interrupted. Neither could you. They looked at each other. The firelight caught gold in Mylin's hair, shadowed the grief lines around Finian's eyes. We're both carrying guilt that ain't ours to carry, Mylin whispered. Finian nodded slowly. Reckon we are. The fourth afternoon, the wind finally died. Weak sunlight filtered through. Finian taught Mylin to dance, no music, just his humming an old tune his mother once sang. They moved clumsily in the small space, laughing when they bumped into furniture. The laughter faded. They stood close, swaying gently, his hand on her waist, hers on his shoulder. The moment stretched, fragile and precious. Finian leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was tentative, gentle, full of question and answer both. Mylin pulled back, breathing unsteadily. Finian, I can't. If I ruin you. You ain't ruining nothing, he said firmly. You're fixing what's been broke. She kissed him again, less tentative this time. The fire crackled. The storm outside had passed. The storm inside was just beginning, the good kind, the kind that washes things clean. When they separated, Finian smiled, a genuine one, the first Mylin had seen on his face. Reckon we're in trouble now, he said. Reckon we are, she agreed. The next morning dawned clear and cold. They opened the door to find 3 families waiting. They'd camped nearby during the storm, needing Mylin's help. They brought supplies, smoked meat, fabric, seed corn for spring. As Mylin treated a child's fever, Finian stood on the porch, watching, his community forming, his life rebuilding, his heart learning to beat again. But at the edge of his property line, barely visible against the snow, sat a man on horseback. Gideon Blackwood, the town banker, watching, not approaching, just watching. Then he turned his horse and rode away. Finian's stomach tightened. The storm's over outside, he thought, but another one's coming. The first Sunday in February dawned cold and clear. Finian and Mylin stayed home from church, a deliberate choice to avoid gossip. But Agnes Thorne went and returned at noon with a face like thunder. It started, Finian, she said without preamble. Blackwood made his move. They sat at the table while Agnes explained. Gideon Blackwood had stood up during the service. He'd called Finian and Mylin's arrangement immoral, an offense against God and nature, and a stain on Whisper Creek's Christian character. He demanded Finian send her away within 7 days or face consequences, credit denial, social ostracism, potential legal action for harboring an unwed woman improperly. Several families who'd come to Mylin for treatment, afraid of Blackwood's financial power, had publicly sided with him. Only the Thorns and the poorest ranchers had spoken in their defense, but they lacked Blackwood's influence. I'm sorry, Agnes said, her voice tight with anger. Some folks got more fear than sense. That afternoon, Blackwood himself arrived. Finian met him outside, wouldn't let him near the cabin. Send her away, Croft, Blackwood said from his fine horse. 1 week. After that, I foreclose on this property. I don't owe you enough for foreclosure, Blackwood smiled coldly. You will. I own your credit. 1 word from me and you can't buy seed, supplies, nothing. You'll be bankrupt by spring. He leaned forward in the saddle. But I'll make you a deal. Send the woman away, sign over this land, and I'll forgive your debts. Keep it, and I'll bury you. Why? Finian asked. Why do you want this land so bad? Railroads coming through. This valley is the best route. Your land sits right in the path. I'd rather buy it cheap than pay fair value. Blackwood straightened. It's just business, Croft. Nothing personal's. A man who won't stand for something will fall for anything, Finian said quietly. Blackwood's face hardened. 1 week he rode away, leaving Finian standing in the cold, fists clenched, heart pounding with helpless rage. Inside, My Lin had heard everything through the thin walls. That night, she packed her medical bag, wrote a letter in careful script. You gave me back my life. I won't take yours in return. Thank you for everything. You are the best man I've ever known. At dawn, she walked toward town, bag in hand, letter left on the table. She made it maybe a mile before Finian caught up on horseback. He dismounted, blocked her path. Don't you dare decide for me. I won't let you lose everything for me. I lost one woman because I wasn't there, Finian's voice cracked. I ain't losing another by letting her walk away. If standing with you costs me this land, so be it. Land can be bought again, but there ain't another you. My Lin's face crumpled. Finian, whatever happens, we face it together. That's what people do when they... He couldn't quite say the word. Not yet when they love each other, My Lin finished softly. Finian nodded, throat tight. They stood in the frozen road, breath clouding between them. Finally, exhausted, they sat in the snow. Finian took her hand. I choose you, he said simply. Whatever comes. My Lin leaned against his shoulder. Then we face it together. They returned to the cabin as the sun rose higher. 7 days until Blackwood's deadline. 7 days to find a miracle or lose everything. That night, a wolf howled in the distance, circling, waiting, patient as death. But inside the cabin, 2 people sat together by firelight, hands clasped, refusing to let fear win. Day 7 arrived too quickly. Finian rode into Whisper Creek alone. My Lin wanted to come, he'd refused. I won't have you shamed in public, but she followed anyway, staying back in the gathering crowd that filled the town square. Word had spread a confrontation was coming. At the bank, Gideon Blackwood had foreclosure papers ready. But before Finian could enter, Agnes Thorne appeared with 20 families behind her, ranchers, farmers, laborious, people My Lin had treated through the winter. We got a counteroffer, Blackwood, Agnes announced loudly. We pulled our money. Enough to clear Finian's debt 3 times over. Blackwood's face darkened. This doesn't concern you, Agnes. The hell it doesn't. That nurse saved my nephew's life. Tom Parker's baby girl. The Wilson boy's leg. While you've been counting coins, she's been saving lives. Blackwood took the fight public. He strode into the town square where the crowd had gathered, church folks, merchants, curious onlookers. This is about decency. Blackwood shouted. Croft harbors an unmarried woman, a foreigner. He flouts Christian values. Are we going to allow this corruption? Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some uncertain. Then Dr. Alastair Finch stepped forward. The elderly town physician, respected and quiet, rarely spoke in public. When he did, people listened. That nurse has done more good in 3 months than I've managed in 3 years, he said clearly. She treats those I turn away because they can't pay. She sits with the dying when nobody else will. If that's immoral, then judge me too, because I sure as hell haven't shown that kind of charity. The crowd shifted, uncertain now. Finian pushed through to the center to face them all. You want to judge her? Then judge me. Judge every man here who's let pride keep him from asking for help. Judge every mother who brought her sick child to My Lin in the dark of night because she couldn't afford daylight prices. His voice grew stronger. This woman's got more Christian charity in her little finger than this whole town's got in its church building. A small voice spoke up. Pip, the orphan boy whose infected leg My Lin had saved from amputation, limped forward. She give me my leg back when Doc Finch said cut it off, Pip said, looking at Blackwood. That's all I know. One by one, others stepped forward. A mother holding a healthy baby, mine would have died without her. A rancher, she treated my wife for free when I had nothing. The widow, she sat with my husband when he was dying. Held his hand so he wasn't alone. The tide turned visibly. Blackwood felt it, made a desperate play. "You're all fools," he snarled, "letting sentiment cloud your judgment." Agnes Thorne stepped directly in front of him. "You calling me a fool, Gideon? You're a meddling old woman who should mind her own business." Agnes's husband, Henry, silent until that moment, rose to his full height. He was the valley's largest landowner after Blackwood, a quiet man who carried immense weight. "My wife ain't foolish," Henry said calmly. "And my money don't go to bullies. I'm pulling my accounts, Blackwood. All of them. And I'll build that railroad spur myself before I let you profit from cruelty." The crowd erupted in approval. Other families announced they'd move their money, too. Blackwood stood alone, face flushed with humiliation. He'd miscalculated badly. In trying to crush Finian, he'd revealed his own greed and lost the town's respect. He retreated to the bank, defeated. Finian stood in the square, breathing hard, hardly believing what just happened. Then he saw her, My Lin, pushing through the crowd. He held out his hand. She took it. Applause started, tentative, then strong. Agnes embraced them both. Pip hugged My Lin's waist. Dr. Finch shook Finian's hand. "Judge not by where a person comes from," the old doctor said, "but by where they're willing to go." They walked home together through melting snow. Spring was coming. The worst was over. But the best was just beginning. March brought the thaw. The apple tree by Amelia's grave showed its first buds. My Lin touched the rough bark, gently whispered, "Thank you for sharing him, for the gloves, for everything." Henry Thorne arrived with a proposal and a wagonload of lumber. "If you two make it official, get married, establish a proper clinic, I'll donate materials and organize labor." 20 families already volunteered. Henry grinned. "Figured it's time Whisper Creek had a real medical facility, one that don't turn folks away." Finian looked at My Lin. She looked back, hope and question in her eyes. That evening, Finian said, "I ain't got much. Probably never will. But what I got, I'd share with you every day till I die. If you'll have me, no fancy speech, no flourishes, just truth." My Lin smiled through tears. "Yes. On one condition, name it. We build that clinic together. So no one else loses someone they love because they can't afford help." Finian kissed her. "Deal." The wedding happened 3 days later, an outdoor ceremony at the cabin, simple and honest. Dr. Finch officiated, his voice steady with emotion. The whole community attended, families crowding the small yard. Even some folks who'd initially sided with Blackwood came, now ashamed and seeking peace. Agnes cried. Pip stood beside Finian as his unofficial best man, chest puffed with pride. During the vows, Finian and My Lin planted an apple tree together, a young sapling from Henry Thorne's orchard. "This is for what was," Finian said, patting soil around the roots. "And what's coming," My Lin added. "For all of us." Dr. Finch smiled. "Marriage ain't just two people. It's a promise to build something that outlasts you. These two already started. We're just catching up." "Amen," the community responded. After the ceremony, construction began immediately. Men raised the clinic frame, an addition to the cabin's east side. Saws sang. Hammers rang. Children played. Pip approached Finian shyly. Can I stay? Help you build?" Finian looked at My Lin. She nodded, smiling through happy tears. "Son," Finian said, his voice thick, "you already are part of this family." Pip beamed. By sunset, the clinic frame stood, rough but sturdy. 2 more children arrived that evening, siblings, 7 and 5, orphaned by winter's cruelty. Their aunt couldn't keep them. My Lin welcomed them in without hesitation. "We got room. We'll make more if we need to." That night, Finian and My Lin stood on the porch, watching their expanded family through the window. Pip helping the younger children settle in. The clinic frame silhouetted against the darkening sky. "Love ain't just a feeling," Finian said quietly. "It's choosing to build, every single day." My Lin leaned against him. Then let's keep building. Stars appeared overhead. The apple tree's shadow stretched across Amelia's grave, not erasing the past, but growing from it. Something good was taking root here. Something that would last. 1 year later, a traveling journalist from Harper's Weekly named Eleanor Prentice sketched the bustling scene. Mylin teaching 3 women midwifery techniques in the clinic's bright examination room. Finian working with ranchers in the new corral. Pip, now 14 and tall, helping 2 younger children feed chickens. The hand-carved clinic sign read, Bennett Family Clinic. All welcome. Eleanor interviewed patients. An elderly woman clutching a healthy baby. My granddaughter would have died in childbirth without Nurse Mylin. A weathered farmer. Finian gave me seed on credit when the bank wouldn't. Paid him back doubles. A widow. She sat with my husband through his last night. Held his hand. Sang to him. He didn't die alone. Dr. Finch, now semi-retired, spent his afternoons apprenticing under Mylin. That evening, he gifted her his medical library, 30 precious books. You taught this town that healing ain't just medicine, he said, voice rough with emotion. It's dignity. It's seeing people as worthy of care regardless of their means or their race. These will serve you better than they served me. That evening, the journalist shared her draft article. Finian and Mylin read it together by lamplight. Eleanor's prose was clean and powerful. The Nurse of Whisper Creek, how one woman and an infertile rancher changed the frontier. It told their story honestly. The frozen train station, the scandal in Boston, the community's judgment, the public stand, the transformation. In a land where difference often breeds suspicion, Eleanor had written, Finian Croft and Mylin chose differently. They proved that broken people, given kindness and purpose, don't just survive. They build. This clinic, serving the forgotten and the poor, stands as testament. Redemption isn't granted. It's built, log by log, life by life. Mylin's eyes filled with tears. She got it right. She wrote about all of them, every family. That's because it's the truth, Finian said. You don't need to fancy up the truth. Pip appeared in the doorway, followed by the 3 younger children, the orphans now fully part of the family. Mama Mylin, are we famous? Pip asked. Finian laughed, pulled the boy close. No, son. We just lived right. Sometimes that's enough to change things. The youngest child, a girl of 6 named Hope, tugged Mylin's skirt. Can we have a story? Always, Mylin said, settling into the rocking chair Finian had built for her. They gathered around, for children, 1 good man, 1 woman who'd found her purpose. Outside, the original apple tree bore its first fruit. As she began the story, Finian stood at the window. The clinic glowed with lamplight. He thought of Amelia sometimes still, but the grief no longer crushed him. She was part of this, her gloves that saved Mylin's hands, her grave that taught him loss could transform into growth, her memory that made him brave enough to love again. The family he and Amelia had dreamed of was here, built not from blood, but from choice. Later, after the children slept, Finian and Mylin sat on the porch. The journalist's article lay between them. They'll remember us, Mylin said softly. Maybe, Finian replied. But that ain't why we did it. No, Mylin agreed. We did it because it needed doing. Because someone helped us when we needed it most. Finian took her hand. And because we learned something important. What's that? That redemption ain't about forgetting what broke you. It's about using those broken pieces to build something new. Something stronger. Mylin kissed him, gentle, grateful, full of the quiet joy that comes from lives lived with purpose. The journalist's final paragraph captured it perfectly. That clinic still stands today, over a century later, now a museum. But the town remembers. History isn't always made by the powerful. Sometimes it's made by the broken who chose to heal, the judged who chose to forgive, and the poor who chose to give. Finian and Mylin Croft didn't just survive that winter. They showed us what love looks like when it's built on purpose. Their story reminds us that kindness given freely creates ripples that reach far beyond what we can see. That's the history worth remembering. That's the legacy worth building.